I had seen a lot of death. Nothing ever impacted my life like that issue, that thing, that evil thing. And it was cold, it was overcast, nasty day. And I remember helping putting her in a body bag. And the thing I do remember is I'm not going to drink anymore.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Noah, and I am so glad you guys are here. Today, we are going to do another episode in my mini-series called A Survivor's Testimony. I have with me my 12-step sponsor, Ron, and Ron is going to share a little bit about his story from active addiction into recovery, what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. My hope with these stories is to offer inspiration and hope to any of you that may need to hear this today, that are impacted by addiction, either personally and or from a friend or family member, and just to bring a positive spin to what can be a really difficult thing in the lives of many of us. So without further ado, we're just going to dig into Ron's story and we're going to see where it takes us. Ron, thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
No, I love spending time with you, and thank you for inviting me today. It's an absolute joy, and it's painful to share my story.
Yeah.
But if it helps people that have family members that are in addiction or whatever addiction that they have, I hope my story can bring some hope. So it starts out in 1948, February 14th, I was born. I'm 76 years old. My dad was a construction worker and my mom was a clerk. We came from very modest means. My dad traveled all over the country in the Eisenhower administration when they were building the interstate road system. And so he lived in this small little trailer with my sister, who was 3 years older than myself. And what we would do is we would go to a town and job would quit and we'd pack up and move and go to another town. And this trailer was only probably 30 feet, and my parents never drank.
Really?
In terms of, they never got drunk.
Got it.
They drank modestly. A six-pack of beer would last my dad maybe a month. And so what happened was, when I was about 8 years old, I started stealing with a neighbor friend of mine, and my character kind of stopped getting developed at around that age.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it definitely impacted my future.
Okay.
And I got used to stealing. We'd go into stores and steal, and then when I got my license when I was 15 and a half years old, my permit, and then I got my license at 16. We knocked over a liquor store.
When you say knocked over, what do you mean?
We would have one guy in the car, and he would run in and grab a bottle and run out, and then I would be the getaway driver.
Okay, so you didn't have people at like gunpoint?
No, we didn't have people at gunpoint.
I heard knocked over.
Excuse me. And so we did the same thing with a Falstaff beer truck as well. We got into stealing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
My first drunk was I was probably 14 or 15, and it was at my buddy's ranch in Nevada, California.
Yeah.
And we took some sleeping bags up on a hill that overlooked the town of Nevada. And he had a pint of Hill and Hill, and we had a six-pack of Country Club stout malt liquor.
Oh my goodness.
And I'd never really had much to drink. I'd take sips off my dad's beer every once in a while, but I was always fascinated at an early age with alcohol.
I have a question for you, if I may interject.
Yes,
What would you say your disposition was like as a kid? Do you remember being a happy kid, a stressed out kid, an anxious kid? How would you remember that to be?
That's probably a good question, and I would say almost all of the above.
Okay.
You know, I would fit in with a lot of academic people, a lot of good people, and I would also fit in with people that weren't doing so well.
Got it.
And so I didn't feel really stressed out much. My dad was, he was a yeller. He yelled a lot. And there was a lot of name calling and all that kind of stuff. his only hobby was to work, and that's what we did. We worked. We worked on cars. We worked on a lot of different things. And so I can remember times where he'd be underneath the truck and he'd say to me, I'm 10 years old, right? He goes, well, give me a 5/8 inch box end wrench. And I'm staring at the toolbox in a cold sweat, wondering what a 5/8 wrench would look like. And he said, you know, I better not come out from underneath this truck, right? So I was under a lot of fear with my dad because he did get physical from time to time.
Gotcha.
He was on Iwo Jima.
Okay.
And during World War II, he was beaten as a kid. My parents had a homestead. They lived on a homestead. They had two of them right next to each other, my dad and my mom. And they grew up in a town called Saco, Montana, 50 miles south of the Canadian border in Montana. And so they knew hard work.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of emotional connection with my parents. They didn't know how to do that. They didn't know how to do that with each other.
Okay.
And so with that experience of going up on the hill and with the booze, I remember getting really sick. The lights of Nevada were spinning.
Oh man.
And I woke up the next morning. I had weeds in my hair. There was puke all over my sleeping bag. And I said, yes, I loved it, because this took me to a place that there was no waves. There was absolutely no waves. I loved alcohol from that point, and that's why we started stealing alcohol.
Yeah, sounds like we had a similar first drinking experience.
Yeah, and isn't that something? And yet we want to do it again. And that's the addiction, and that's the disease part. And so I didn't do well in school. I chased that illusion, that romance in that bottle. I was the kid that showed up half lit at dances, sometimes wiped out. I wrecked my car on the way to the senior picnic. We flew off the road. We were going out to the picnic. And
how old are you?
I'm 18.
18, okay.
I'm 18 and I'm on my way to the senior picnic.
Okay.
And so we thought, oh, maybe we got to get rid of this beer because we're underage and just got into an accident.
Yeah.
And so we threw the beer away, and then we got back up on the freeway and hitchhiked the rest of the way out to the beach.
Oh my gosh.
And left the car there. Anyway, that was just part of many experiences with irresponsibility. And the addiction grabbed me right away.
How much were you drinking at that time? 18 years old, roughly?
Oh, probably maybe a couple six-packs on the weekend.
So it was still weekend binge drinking?
It was pretty light compared to
where it got
today, compared to where it got to, you know, what happened.
Yeah.
So what happened was I stopped my educational thing in school, and I barely graduated in my senior year. And so what does a kid do in 1966 when you graduate and you have no skills? I joined the Marine Corps.
Sure.
And so they sent me over to Oakland, California. I passed the physical and went down to MCRD.
What's MCRD?
Marine Corps Recruit Depot.
Got it.
And then I got orders to North Carolina, which I really wanted because it was 18 years drinking age. And so I flew over to North Carolina to Camp Lejeune, and that's where I did my combat engineer training.
What does it mean to be a combat engineer?
It has different facets. Some of it's explosive ordnance. Some of it is operating heavy machinery. You know, most of it's outdoors, and that typically would last 2 or 3 months of training. So I'm just in town and just got to the base, get settled in. I go out with these buddies that I don't know, and we went into a bar, and I go into a blackout. I don't remember much of anything other than I got into a fight in the back alley of this bar with one of the guys that was in the bar, another Marine. And the MPs came, and that was my first Article 15, which is Article 15 in the service is like a misdemeanor.
Got it. Is it a pretty big deal to get one?
It can be. If you get 3, they kick you out.
Okay.
Or if you get 3, they put you in the brig or whatever for correction. So, North Carolina, I got through the schooling okay, and then they sent me to El Toro Naval Air Station, and that's when I got Westpac orders. And Westpac orders at that time was that you were on your way to Vietnam. And so...
what did you think when you got those orders?
That's another great question. I don't know that I thought much of anything.
Were you scared? Were you excited?
No, I was excited.
Okay.
I wanted adventure.
Got it.
I had no idea what war was all about. I just wanted away from me and away from my family. I wanted my family to be proud of me, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to embrace any educational opportunities that I might have had. I just wanted out.
Yeah.
And I wanted excitement. So I got what I was looking for on my first tour.
You were 19?
I was 19 when I got into country, and I did my first tour, which was 13 months.
Wow. So you were in Vietnam for 13 months?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and
it's a long time.
I got another Article 15. I got into a fight with a guy that was about as big as you, and he was one of our toughest guys in the platoon. I had seen him fight before. I don't remember the evening.
Were you drinking there too?
I was drinking. I went into a full-on blackout.
Can I ask you what the alcohol situation was like in Vietnam? What was your access?
Yeah, the access, they had the beer gardens, and it was 20 or 25 cents for a can of beer, and you could drink as much as you want. They called it a 3.2 beer.
Oh, so like low ABV.
Yeah.
Got it.
And if you were enlisted, you couldn't buy hard liquor until you were an E6 or above. So we would just have officers buy us the hard liquor. And that's what really got me into trouble. That evening that I got into a fight with a guy by the name of Skinner, we were both drinking hard liquor. They said the fight lasted a long time. I woke up in sick bay. I had a broken tooth, broken nose, broken cheekbone.
Jeez.
Pretty messed up. But at that time, nobody recognized alcohol as a problem. I was standing in front of our CO, our company officer, and he said, if you don't want to pick up any more of these, because we'll kick you out of the Marine Corps.
Were you an angry guy at that time in your life? Would you say that this disposition to fight was mostly connected to your alcohol consumption, or would you consider yourself to have been relatively well regarded amongst at least your peers? Like, did people get along with you?
I lived a double life.
Got it.
When I drank, I became disgustingly antisocial. I don't know why. There was obviously some hidden anger underneath there that I covered up in between my drinking. For some reason, I always found when I drank, not all the time did I get into trouble.
Okay.
But when I got into trouble, I was drinking.
Got it.
That kind of thing.
That kind of thing.
And so, having said that, alcohol took me to places that I typically would not go. I would never go sober. And so when I got out of the Marine Corps, I actually went back to Pendleton, and I was stationed in.
How old were you here?
Yeah, I was. Well, that was. I was 20 years old when I got back from Vietnam.
After your first tour.
First tour, and I went to Pendleton, which was just outside of Oceanside, California.
Okay.
And so there, I tried to buy a drink in Oceanside, California. And they arrested me because I wasn't 21. I had a few weeks to go before my 21st birthday. So I get arrested again. The MPs come. I'm standing in front of the CO. So another Article 15, and then I got it. Yeah, I got 3 of them. And but then it was hard to get kicked out of the Marine Corps then because they needed a lot of bodies. And so I got sideways meaning that I wasn't getting along with the staff sergeant that was over our platoon.
Yeah.
And we almost got into a fight.
Oh my goodness.
And so they were going to court-martial me. And the CO, I was standing in front of him, and he said, "You sign this waiver, we're sending you back to Vietnam." I said, "Fine, I'll go. I wanted to go back."
You wanted to go back?
Yeah. And I think at that time, I don't know really why I wanted to. I was wondering if that was like a death wish. I don't know what it was, because when I got back from my first tour, I wasn't doing well emotionally and mentally.
Can I ask a question without imploring any details?
Yeah.
Had you seen a lot of death on your first tour?
Not a lot of death. The first tour was relatively easy. We went to graves registration, and we saw a lot of bodies come in. We got rocketed every once in a while. We lost a few guys. But if you look at relative security, that was probably one of the best places to be.
Got it.
Then the second time, when they were processing us at Camp Hansen, I had asked to see if I could stay at Camp Hansen, and they said, "No, you're going to be with Explosive Ordnance Detail, shore party." And then I thought, oh boy, this is going to be a different tour. And it was a very different tour. I was only in country in about 7 or 8 months, and I got wounded. And I also put in for a college cut.
A college cut? What's that mean?
That means I could get out early and start college in September rather than wait till my rotation in October. And so over there, I vandalized the CO's office after I got off an operation. We had lost some guys. I had, the wound that I got was very superficial. It was in my right thigh. They pulled the shrapnel out, patched me up. They put me on a deuce and a half, which is just a big truck, and sent me back out on the same operation. And so what we were doing was land clearing operations and mine clearing operations.
Jeez.
So we blew 500-pound blockbuster bombs. After they would get done saturating, they call it saturation bombing.
Yeah.
They would send us in and make sure that all the bombs were either exploded or whatever. So we would dig bombs up with TD-18 International tractors. We would come along and blow them in place and do that kind of thing. We'd do mine sweeps in the morning and make sure the roads were clear, that kind of thing. So I remember my last tour being processed in Camp Hansen once again. And all the things that were going down, we were being spit on and all this stuff in San Francisco, and that's where I lived. I lived about 30 miles north of San Francisco. And so I didn't want anybody to know I was in the Marine Corps, but I still had the white sidewalls. I looked like a Marine. And so I bought this 3-piece pinstripe ugly suit that they could make in like 12 hours, right? And I remember I bought a purple shirt. I must have looked ridiculous when I stepped off the plane. There was no issues at all during that time, and my parents were there to pick me up. And but when I went home, I had friends that used to be my friends. They knew I just got back from Vietnam. Got
Tour
discharged.
number 2.
Yeah, that was after my second tour, and I got discharged. And I was on my way to college, and if you were a Marine or in the Army, they wanted you to go to counseling. And so I went to counseling for a while, and my head was so screwed up, I couldn't focus. And so I got into flying, and I got my private pilot's license, and the VA was paying for my commercial rating. And that was going really well. And then I got drunk in San Francisco, and I had a 53 Chevy, and I slammed into this car, and it was a hit and run.
Oh, no.
So
how much are you drinking at this point?
oh, I was drinking a lot.
What does that look like?
At this point, I was managing a liquor store.
Oh, really?
So I got free booze, and then I was stealing booze. You know, as I said, I was stealing from a very early age. The one thing that I lost along the way, or never even had, was character. You know, and so I would steal, and I would lie, and I would cheat, and that's the person that I was. You know, I chased women. I never was capable of any long-term relationships with women. And so
So you crashed your Chevy.
crashed, yeah. So I crashed the Chevy, and I took off to Weed, California. And I was dropping acid then, and doing quite a bit of coke, and went to Weed, and I picked up this guy on the way.
Dropped out of school?
Dropped out of school, dropped out of flying. You know, I was.
So right now you're kind of just running and gunning, as they say.
I'm running and gunning.
You're drinking most days?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm drinking really almost every day.
Got it.
As I can remember, the
Sure.
best I can remember.
Sure.
You know, it's kind of funny because it kind of all blends in together, right? When I look back at my past, because it was so long ago.
Yeah.
And but what I do recall was I was in full flight from reality. I really didn't understand what it was like to be kind and loving to people. I used people. One of the guys I was in Vietnam with, I used to box quite a bit. I broke his nose one time when I was drunk. I was teaching him how to box, and these gloves were only like 8-ounce gloves. It was junk like that you know, I wasn't operating in any sort of a moral framework. Everything was relative.
Did you have any self-esteem issues or despair issues, depression issues?
Oh yeah, when I got back, I had all the above.
Got it.
What I didn't recognize, because I hid it so well with drugs and alcohol, is when I finally sobered up, how much self-esteem, how I loathed myself. I'd look in the mirror and I just didn't even want to. I hated that person that I was. I hated that person that I had become.
Yeah.
And so I went up to Weed, and went into well, before Weed was a drug house. I lived in a drug house for about a year.
How does someone end up living in a drug house?
I was working in the liquor store.
Okay.
This biker kept coming in. I needed a place to stay. And he said, why don't you come over? We got a room. We'll rent it out to you. And it was just a bunch of bikers and parties and drugs.
Okay.
And women.
Probably suited you at that time.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
It was perfect. There was no judgment.
Right.
My hair was growing out.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it was like rock on, you know?
Yeah.
And we'd turn Creedence way up and just blow the windows out, man. It was fun.
And you were in your mid-20s?
Yeah, I was 22.
So we're still
when
at
I was in
22.
the drug house.
Okay. So take us along. Where do we go from here?
So where do we go from here? We go up to Weed, California. I'm in Weed for a little bit, and I'm working for patent distributing, helping these it's a beer distributor and wine distributor,
Perfect.
helping them unload their trucks, and they gave us all the beer you could drink.
Oh, boy.
It was a drunkard's
I
drink.
was going to say a drunkard's drink.
I just loved it.
Yeah.
And so one evening, a friend of mine, Lynn, and I were driving home, and I was too drunk to drive, so I let him drive, and he was too drunk, and they pulled us over at the Chevron gas station in Weed. And they pulled Lynn out of the car, and they were going to handcuff him, and I got out of the car,
Uh-oh.
and I swung on a cop,
Oh, boy.
and ripped his badge off.
Oh, boy.
And that cop, by the way, was named Charlie Bird. And Charlie Bird was a beautiful, big black man that handled himself so well and so perfect. That's one thing I remembered. I was so drunk, but this guy was so professional. And even though he choked me down and threw me in the squad car and took me to Wairika, which is about 30 miles up the road,
Yeah.
up on I-5. And I woke up and I was shackled and manacled. And anyway, I'll get to that story because there's a piece that just happened about a few months ago where I actually met Charlie Bird's
No kidding.
cousin
Wow.
in one of the meetings that I attended down in Reading.
Yeah.
And Charlie became the first black sheriff ever in Wairika,
Wow.
in that area.
So question for you before we keep going. At this point in your life, had you started even remotely considering that you had a problem with drugs and alcohol? Had you considered putting in place any rules or any barriers so that you stayed in line, so to speak? Like, I'm only going to drink on the weekends. Or had any of that stuff crossed your mind yet?
Not at all.
Okay.
not at all. I mean, the romance in that bottle was alive and well.
Oh yeah, it's a really palpable thing in early parts of addiction.
And when you're in your 20s, 22, and here's the weird thing was, I was running when running wasn't even popular, and I got into this underworld thing with flying, and that's a whole different topic that I don't want to go down this rabbit trail.
Of course.
But they put us up in the Portofino Riviera in Sausalito, and we were, my buddy that I was in Nam with, we bought a pair of Levi running shoes. Really weird. And we would run across the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge, and then we would run down into the Presidio and back.
I've made that run.
Have you? Isn't that beautiful?
It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful run.
Yeah.
And so, and then in college, I was taking weightlifting and swimming as my electives, and so I was fit.
Yeah.
I was like the most fit drunk you ever saw.
Yeah. That's funny.
And drug addict. So after the weed experience,
And the Charlie experience.
and the Charlie, and you know, the ATR, my air transport rating never happened. My flying, that was a commercial flying rating that I wanted to get because I dropped out of that. And then I got back into horses, and so I met my first wife, and she was from a well-to-do family in Corte Madera, and she had lots of money, and I thought that'd be really great. So I married her, moved up to her parents' ranch in Oregon, and her mom drank just like I did. My father-in-law turns to me one day and she goes, "Ron, you're going to get a job?" I thought, why? You know, I'm only 23. This is fun. What do you want me to get a job for? And so I did. I got a job in underground construction. And as it turned out, I was drinking up all the profits. I'm on the Williams Highway. We have a beautiful place out in the Applegate River, right on the Applegate River, 3 acres. We have a son now that's 5 years old.
Oh wow! So you're 28?
Well, let's see. No, at that time I'm close to 27.
So
I
you're
got
married a few years. You have a child. You're still drinking a lot.
Yeah.
Did your drugging or anything go down upon marriage and fatherhood? Now that you're in Applegate, you're working, you're out of the drug house, or did your general consumption stay similar?
It got really strange because I didn't stop drugging, and I didn't stop drinking, and in fact the drinking started to accelerate to a point where I was bringing drug dealers home.
Oh wow!
I had a guy that lived out in Cave Junction that wanted me to build some false cabinets in his sailboat so he could smuggle pot, you know.
Wow.
So I was kind of in that place of I found nefarious characters that were.
What was your dynamic like with your wife? Did she consume as well? Were you bonded in the chaos, or was it always an issue?
No, we weren't bonded. Well, she mellowed out for a while, and then I stole a backhoe, a piece of heavy machinery.
Hold on, but when you say mellowed out, what do you mean? Like she just accepted that her husband drank and drugged?
She just accepted what was going on,
Okay.
right? Because I was never physically violent with her. But I do remember her pulling out of the driveway for the last time, and she said, I'm done with the drug dealing, I'm done with your alcoholism. And she's backing out of the driveway with my 5-year-old son. I've got a little bit of vodka left, and I got a roach sitting right next there, and that's one moment of clarity that I had, that something's wrong. Something is not right. And I didn't do anything with it because I didn't really understand it. You know,
But something hit you.
Yeah, something hit me. It was like, what have I become?
Gotcha.
And that was probably the first time that I can remember where I had some sort of self-examination.
Wow.
I like what Plato said, you know, a life that is never examined is hardly a life worth living.
It's really hard to examine your life in active addiction. It's like you said, and my experience as well, the moments of clarity, the fleeting moments of actual honesty within myself few and far between, and the opportunity to act on those even smaller, in my experience.
And being in that grip of addiction, it's like you have no choice, right?
Oh yeah, you feel
You
possessed.
have to drink.
Yeah,
If you don't have a recovery system or a plan, you have to drink,
yeah,
especially when you're toxic. And I was toxic all the time.
right.
I got into transcendental meditation. I wanted to follow some sort of a spiritual path. I started drinking Heinekens and just smoking pot, and then that lasted for a few weeks, and then everything started unraveling again. Shortly after Joanne leaves, I get into I smacked into an oak tree on the Williams Highway and
Another
took out
accident?
another accident. By then, I'd wrecked 3 cars.
By 28, 29 years old.
Yeah, by 28, 29 years old.
Wow.
Now, she pulls out, she's gone. And then I thought, well, what's an alcoholic to do? You got to make it geographical. So I went to Alaska,
All right, this is the Alaska part.
the Alaska part.
Yeah.
So I get up there, and I don't have a home. I got $200 in my wallet. And in Anchorage, Alaska, during the pipeline days, that doesn't go very far.
Okay.
I talked a woman into allowing me to stay in her home with her 3 children.
Oh my goodness.
She didn't even know who I was. She just put an ad in the paper, and she met me, and she liked me. And, you know, I liked her, and we seemed to get along great. I remember she went up to Fairbanks, and she called me on New Year's, and she goes, why don't you come up here and join us? She said, just get out on the Richardson Freeway, and you can hitchhike from Anchorage to Fairbanks. That's 300 miles.
Oh my God.
And I almost froze to death. So my decision-making abilities were bad. but when I drank, everything seemed like a great idea.
I understand.
Right? I didn't follow that through.
Yeah.
What's that gonna be like?
Yeah.
And there was more stuff up in Fairbanks that we don't have time to go into,
Sure.
other than to say just more of that chaos, more of the same desperation that I was under. I was under this, like Thoreau said in 1850 when he wrote Walden's Pond, he said, most men lead lives of quiet desperation.
And you felt that desperation even at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Because I had times where I was so enveloped in my daily drinking that I could kind of sense the desperation, but maybe I conflated the hangover with it, and the drink was soon to come, and I don't think I was able to marinate in my melancholy, marinate in my hopelessness very much. Do you think that, were you pretty in touch with not feeling well, or were you so in it that it was hard to even realize just how poor you were doing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean,
Like, how was your mental health? Were you like, I was miserable every day, all day until I drank? Is that where you were?
there were shades of absolute joy.
Okay.
You know, I had a boat shop. I had a fiberglass shop. I was repairing boats, and it was going really well. But I was drinking up the profits. But there were moments where it wasn't bad. You know, it seemed like the alcohol was working.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then the crash, right?
Right.
Then it was like, this isn't working. And so the anxiety and the depression would follow. And the only way that I could get out of all of that, I was in a trap I couldn't spring. I had to drink.
Yeah.
I had to drink.
Yeah. The solution to the problem that it's creating, or at least perpetuating, rather. Like the drink quells the anxiety and the dread that then further perpetuates the anxiety, depression, and dread.
Exactly, Noah. And I know you know this, but the only way we can get out of that trap is to drink or to get help, right?
Yeah.
And so we're at a crossroad. What's our decision? Because I get married up in Anchorage.
Second time with the lady you moved in with?
Yeah, no, this
No.
was another lady.
Okay.
But this, I got into the moving and storage business up there, and I married my assistant.
Okay.
And
So you're into your second marriage.
my second marriage, she liked to drink.
Okay.
Uh,
That's a plus.
That was a plus. She liked Coke. That was a plus.
That's a plus. Only tried once, but I'm glad I didn't try it sooner. I bet I would have really got into it because I thought it was really, really fun.
Oh,
Like,
we would do like amyl nitrate. I mean,
You'll do what now?
amyl nitrate.
What's that?
Oh, that's you could open it up in this gym and you could get high.
Oh.
And you laugh uncontrollably.
Gotcha.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Sounds
Yeah,
like
right.
fun. Yeah, it's like
Until the next day.
until the next day. Okay, so you're married for a second time. You're still in Alaska. You're having, it sounds like those despite it kind of working for you, you are coming into a few more crossroads with your relationship with booze, or at least your sense of wellness, but you're yet to try to get sober. Am I correct in saying that?
At that time, and many times, I was like a functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
I could get by, and I was really good at sales, and I worked hard, and then I drank.
Right.
I worked hard, and I would drink. But the feeling that I had about myself is, during that process, is I loathed myself. And I didn't realize all that the behavior was, a lot of it was driven by PTSD, and I
Sure.
didn't really understand that
Yeah.
until just recently.
Right. I
Until
can only
recently.
imagine. Yeah.
You know, my sobriety date is April 15th, 2000. And so I've got 24 years of sobriety, and I'm still learning about what it was like.
Yeah.
And I know what it was like, and I don't want to repeat what it was like,
Yeah.
because it was horrible.
Yeah.
But today, I look back on it, and I understand a little bit more of the reasons behind why I did what I did.
Yeah. That's probably been nice to have some perspective.
It's been a great journey of self-discovery.
Yeah, I really despise the fact that it seems like self-discovery is impossible in active addiction. It's just a frustrating reality.
Yeah.
So you're in your second marriage. Take us from there.
So the second marriage, I was offered a job with a chemical company down in Seattle.
Oh, so we're back in.
Yeah, so now we're going to go, my buddy flies up, I got a little Honda, we load some stuff in there, and we're going to drive the Alcan
From Alaska to.
from Anchorage down to Seattle.
Oh my God.
Right. And we
How long
loaded
of a
up the
drive
car
is
with
that?
booze and Coke. I put I had a 270 rifle, and put that in the back, the back of the hatchback.
As one does.
And I remember going into customs. Back in those days, they saw the 270. They just let me go through. They just processed me right through.
Wow.
They didn't see all the booze and the drugs in the car, and we drove that entire Alcan, pretty much both Donnie and I, in a blackout.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah. And so we got down to Seattle. I stayed in Seattle for a while. Things didn't go there. It didn't go well there at all. And I didn't like the company that I was working for, so I made a geographical to Montana. And I had the whole western part of Montana working for a company called Share Chemical.
Okay.
And I would measure I was living in Missoula, so from Missoula to Kalispell was 2 6-packs. So I would measure the distance of my travels in 6-packs or
How fast you would drink them?
how fast I would drink them.
Interesting.
Right. That's about a 2 6-pack drive
Oh wow.
or whatever.
That is some.
Yeah,
That's some cool
crazy.
alcoholic stuff
Yeah,
right
yeah.
there. Yeah.
And so I have a son, with my first wife,
Yeah.
and then now my other wife is pregnant.
And she's
My
still
first-
in Alaska?
Yeah, she's in Alaska, but she comes back with me,
Okay, okay.
and then she goes to Montana with me.
Okay, okay, got it.
And so one day after work, I went into a place called the French Connection in Missoula, Montana,
Okay.
and I got into a fight with one of the patrons there, and some police showed up, and I apparently got into a fight with them as well.
Is this
I
your
don't-
first fight in a while?
Been quite a while since I'd been in any kind of an altercation.
Okay.
But I was in front of the judge, and he said, you've just committed a felony. Striking a police officer.
Right.
They didn't do anything done on weed, and fortunately, states never really communicated with each other because I'd already picked up a couple of DUIs in California.
Oh, you failed to mention that.
Yeah. So there was so much wreckage that I'm going to continue to fail to mention,
Oh, yeah.
only because it would take forever.
Fair enough.
So what we did, I got jammed up in Missoula, So the judge is telling me, okay, you get into a 12-step treatment program, and you go to church, and you go to meetings every day for 90 days, and I'll defer your sentence because I'll put you in Deer Lodge State Penitentiary.
Wow. So prison was on the line.
Prison, 5 years of prison was on the line.
5 years of prison was on the line.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And so I went to church, I remember once, and I went down into this smoke-filled basement of this 12-step program, and I saw all these happy people. I'm looking around, I'm going, where's the alcoholics? and it was crazy because they didn't look like alcoholics.
Yeah.
And I raised my hand. I was in the first 30 days, and these people came up to me afterwards, and I was thinking, they got some kind of an angle here. I thought I was in an Amway convention or something. They were so happy. Church didn't work out.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not going back to this. This is crazy. I was freaked out when I looked at those 12 steps, and I thought, no, there's no way I'm going to do that stuff. Only thing I want to do is just pay the bills, get things caught up.
Not go to prison.
And not go to prison. And so we left the state of Montana.
Did you do your 90 days?
No.
Oh.
I only did, I want to say 2 meetings, but I think it was only 1 meeting.
And then you just blitzed?
I quit the company that I was working for, and I just took her to Portland, Oregon.
What does that mean for your judge and what you needed to do to avoid prison?
It means that if he caught me, that he would send me to prison.
But since you ran out, it's like, where did he go back then?
Kind of back then, they didn't
Follow up very well with stuff like that?
The states weren't
That's
communicating
what you
with each
said.
other.
And, okay.
They weren't communicating.
I mean, that's insane, Ron.
Yeah.
In my opinion, with, of course, nothing but the utmost respect, the idea that that's how your brain processed that situation is, I recognize it and I don't judge it, but boy, that sounds insane.
It is.
Yeah. It's like, man.
And it really defines what unmanageability is.
Did any part of you at that time finally go, whoa, maybe I do need to think about cutting back or getting sober, or were you not quite there yet?
No.
Okay.
No. It was just a couple pieces of bad luck.
Yeah, some bad luck.
String of bad luck.
Yeah,
I know things will change if I make it geographical.
Okay, so we're in Portland now.
So my sister, actually we went to Gresham, and my sister said, you can move in with us for a while, and so we did. We moved in with them for a couple months, and it was shortly after that I was picked up on another felony.
Damn. What happened? I was about to say, what did you do this time?
Well, that was back child support.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And back then they finally started catching up to the dads that were deadbeat dads, and that's what I was. And so I had that. Shortly after that, I went to treatment, went to my first treatment program. I went to 5 treatment programs.
Why did you go to your first one? What was the catalyst to do that? Because that's a huge step.
Yeah, I got a DUI over in Vancouver.
So you got another DUI.
Another DUI.
Okay. And was this just a mandated treatment and or jail?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it was your decision to go?
Yeah, I think so.
Was it to get out of the crosshairs, or was this because some part of you wanted help?
I think it's a mixture of both.
Okay, that's a big deal. How old are we then?
It's kind of a casual approach. I think I was about 32.
That's a great time to go to rehab.
Yeah, right.
I went to rehab at that time for my second time.
I remember.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what was rehab like?
Well, at that time, the VA wasn't really treating their patients very well.
What do you mean?
Here's an example. I'm checking in, right? And this guy is moaning. We're in this barrack kind of thing, barracks, and there's beds down the aisles, on both aisles. And there was a guy across from me, and he kept moaning and moaning.
Detoxing?
I don't know what he was doing. I thought he was detoxing, but I didn't know what his issues was. And the nurse finally comes in, and the doctor, and it took him forever to get there. And this guy yells out, "Why don't you give him another enema?" And anyway, he died.
Oh my God.
He died. I mean, it was like a brutal place to get sober. And so they wheel him out.
Dead.
Yeah, dead. From alcoholism.
Jesus.
So we had this incurable disease, right?
Right.
And the Medical Association has said that in 1962, that alcoholism is a disease. So it's a disease of the body and the mind.
Allergy of the body, obsession of the mind.
And there you go.
Yeah.
Right? That we know so well.
Yeah,
We know so well.
we sure do.
Um,
So you get through rehab. What happens after?
So I get through that rehab. Shortly after that, I met a guy named Jack, and he was a well-spoken, well-educated man. He graduated from the Colorado School of Mines. We had nothing in common other than our alcoholism, and he liked me, I liked Jack. And so Jack gets out, and he calls me up one night, and I got about 2 or 3 months of sobriety.
Okay.
And I'm starting to go to meetings.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm feeling good. And Jack called me up and he goes, Ron, I'm drunk. You need to bail me out. I said, I'll be right over, Jack. And he lived up on Wisteria. So I go over to Jack's place and he's renting this room downstairs and kind of like a little apartment complex. And I walk downstairs and I open the door and there's Jack pointing a .22 rifle at me.
Jeez.
And I took the rifle away from Jack. I'm unnerved. I mean, this is unnerving. And I said, Jack, why don't you go out to the beach with me? I have an appointment out there. It was one of my customers, and I needed to do a survey because I'm in the moving and storage business again.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jack and I climb in the car, and it's a company with a car with a company logo. And so Jack, we're pulling out of Portland. Jack said, man, I could use a drink. I said, I could too.
Oh no!
And so we bought a fifth of vodka, Gordon's vodka.
Ugh.
Yeah, and we started drinking that. And then the police pulled me over halfway out to the beach. And Jack gets out of the car and he falls off of this bank, and he's rolling down there. And he's got a tweed jacket. He's always a natty dresser, right? He's got a big bushy beard. He's got mud, it's raining, his pants his slacks are all messed up. And the cop looks at him and he looks at me and he goes, well, looks like you're doing okay. And so we put Jack in the car and he let me go.
Wow.
And
so I want to backtrack real quick, just
Yeah.
for a second. You said you had a couple, 2-3 months of sobriety. When he brought up drinking, did any part of you even hesitate to agree? Were you kind of uncomfortable early sobriety where you were looking for a reason to jump, or was it just a knee-jerk reaction and you just went for it? What made you cough up your sobriety so quick? Because relapse is a big part of my story, and I think that's an interesting thing that I didn't want to gloss over. Like, you're sober, you're out of rehab, boom, sounds like a good idea again.
Right. It's hard to pull apart each of those relapses.
Yeah.
Right? They kind of all run together.
Sure.
There's a saying of meeting makers make it. Well,
Right.
that's not really true.
Because you made meetings.
I made meetings. I was going to meetings, but I wasn't doing the work.
Right.
And the 12-step work, there's a precise way to, it says we're going to show you precisely how we have recovered.
Right.
So these are suggestions. And so, going back to how I feel or how I felt at that time,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know that I needed a drink. I just wanted a drink. After that experience, and never make a 12-step call by yourself.
With someone's drunk.
That's precisely why they tell us that
Right.
in any recovery program.
That's a good reminder.
Right?
I kind of forget about that sometimes.
Sure.
Okay. So you're back off drinking. You
Yeah.
got away with another drinking and driving scenario. What happened next?
And then, kind of fast forward,
Yeah.
the second wife leaves.
Okay.
And I'm going through another divorce.
Mhm.
Hadn't got my other DUI yet. It was coming. But I went back to drinking, and I wound up in my second treatment program out on the beach at Serenity by the Sea.
Mm.
And went through that, went through another rehab at in Forest Grove, turnaround. So I had all this information, and what I had was a head full of recovery up here and a belly full of booze down here. And I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready. What happened after that is my daughter, who's now 17, and I have Jared at 13. My wife was off the rails, so now I'm a single parent. And I'm going to meetings at times, and I'm staying sober for a few months, but then I go back to drinking. And I'm trying to raise this 17-year-old who's out of control. I sent her over to Utah to try and get her turned around. And then I started going to church. And I was taking my son to church one morning. And during that morning, it was December 22nd of 1996, I'm sitting in church, and I felt this sinking, depressed feeling. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. We get home, and I'm working on some plumbing in the bathroom of our house. And Jared goes outside to play, and he comes running back in, and he says, Dad, he's screaming, Dad, I see Marcy. She's on the deck, and she's dead. Now, I had seen a lot of death. Nothing ever impacted my life like that issue, that thing, that evil thing. And it was cold, it was overcast, nasty day. And I remember helping putting her in a body bag. And the thing I do remember is I'm not going to drink anymore. She had taken my four-wheel drive Isuzu out to the Blue Lake Park with her friends, and she hung around nefarious characters like I did, and she got it stuck. I don't know whether she was afraid of my reaction, because my reaction was a lot of control, behavior, yelling. I mean, I was not a good parent. I was a good parent in terms of giving them everything they needed as far as physical needs, but I didn't know how to raise kids. I don't know what caused it, but to this day, hardly a day goes by that I don't think about my daughter. I thought that would be enough to turn me around. I started going back to meetings, then I stopped, and I drank for another 4 years.
What kind of drinking did you do? And thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry. When post the loss of your child, which I really can't imagine, what kind of drinking was that compared to when you were in your late 20s? Like, did any of it change? Did the feeling change? Was it more dark drinking?
Oh, it was dark. I mean, it was mostly drinking alone.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go to bars. I didn't want to get another DUI, so I drank alone in the house.
And were you drinking how many drinks a day?
Oh.
If you had to guess.
Oh. I probably, sometimes a full quart of booze would go down in a day. Sometimes a fifth.
Hard booze?
Hard booze.
Yeah.
My son Brian, who I never saw any of his baseball games, he got drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays. He was a left-handed pitcher. He was also a star defensive end for Novato High, or San Marin High, where he played. And I never saw any of those games. I never took time to go down and see his games, although I'd bring him up for the summer and stuff. So he's playing baseball in New York, so Jared and I fly out to New York. And we're staying at some hotel, I don't know where we were staying, but I go out to dinner, and the thought of having a drink. I've been sober for a while. I can't tell you how long. It could have been a year, it could have been 3 months.
Okay.
Because I'd have 2 months, 3 years. And I started drinking these Long Island iced teas, and he said, Dad, what are you drinking? And Jared's 15 at the time. And I said, oh, these are Long Island, or I said, it's just tea, excuse me, it's just tea. And he goes, no, I can smell booze. You're drinking. And I just kept drinking. And I gave him the keys to the car for him to drive back. He doesn't even have a license. That's how unmanageable my life was. When I look back at that person that I was, until I got sober in 2000, I'm horrified at the things that I did and the things that I should have done. And I should have never allowed this kid to drive. And today, both my sons love me because I've been sober for 24 years. I look at my life today and it's absolutely stunning. I can think about the past, but I can't stay there. I feel like I've been forgiven, but sometimes there's part of this ego that tells me that I can't accept that forgiveness. I have to. If I'm going to be effective and carry the message for other alcoholics that are still suffering, I've got to get over myself. And it's my self-centeredness, it's my lack of my ability to love others unconditionally that would drive me back out to drinking. And was also not working the steps and doing the program as it was suggested for me.
I want to save as much time as you need, or as much time as we can, to talk about recovery, because I agree with and believe in everything you said. As someone who's sponsored by you, I'm blown away by the amount of love and understanding you've always shown me. It's a type of care that I'm just unfamiliar with, as far as someone who's not my family per se, who just unconditionally shows me love and kindness and encouragement. But you're drinking Long Island iced teas. What happened that switched you over to this time? Like, take us to your last couple months of drinking, if you would, what you were thinking, what was going on, because as far as your story has gone, it is just riddled with reasons to get sober, which I understand is not how addiction works as far as a cause and effect. But what finally made this time the time?
Another great question, and I think this is what happened. But I can't say with any degree of accuracy, other than I had enough knowledge about recovery, and I would have a lot of moments, years of sobriety. I was married 5 years to a lady, and I was sober for 5 years.
Wow, I kind of forget that about your story.
I went back out, and Bud L. and Mike C. They came out and they 12-stepped me, and I was they put me in turnaround, and so I had enough information, so the chaos started to minimize. The fighting was pretty much gone.
Yeah.
There was some movement forward where I knew what I was doing was killing me.
Yeah.
But I couldn't stop it once I picked up that first drink. But I'd have long-term sobriety, and then I would think, well, maybe I could just try just one beer, just one small drink. That's all I want. I just want some relief.
Yeah.
And so, was there this epic moment or this moment of clarity? Yeah, probably.
Do you think it was mostly just like death by 1,000 cuts?
Yeah.
As far as like the death of your drinking, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah.
Is that you'd been through so much, you've been in and out of recovery now for so long. Clearly, some part of you deeply longed to escape the life you were living. But do you think in hindsight, there was also a part of you, at least then, that was still reserving some hope for alcohol, and or at the very least, not completely giving yourself to the program to the best of your ability? And as to why you couldn't stick until this last time?
There were so many different thoughts that would run through my head.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, if I have to go to one more meeting and listen to this person share their story or whatever, You know, so I kind of resisted, and I also resisted any spiritual enlightenment. And to me, today, that's my anchor.
Yeah, it is.
It's my spiritual, trying to develop my spiritual awareness on a regular basis.
So I agree. I consider you to be a very spiritual person, and you're helping bring me into the arms of it too. And I'm doing so willingly, that's for sure. I really want it. But take us to your last drink, and then let's go from your first day of sobriety on. Let's hear about what your recovery journey has been like. So it's your last week or last night of drinking. I think maybe you've already alluded to this. Maybe you don't know why it was your last one. Was it a very boring last night of drinking? Because I've had nights of drinking where I knew I was going to rehab the next day, where I tried to, and in hindsight, it almost seems like romanticize my last drink. Farewell, my friend, as if there was anything special about it. But
It wasn't that glamorous. I remember I was at the sports page.
oh, on the
217, yeah, for 217.
I've been there.
And I was dating this woman who took a lot of money from me, a lot, but she got me into recovery.
That sounds like a good
She was
good payment.
She was one of us. She was like me, wild and crazy, and I'd given her a substantial amount of money on a business deal that she had conjured up. It wasn't. It was a false business deal.
Oh, jeez.
But that woman came to the sports page with a friend of mine, and I can't remember who it was, and they got me out of that and put me into Seventh-day Adventist treatment, which is only a 2-week treatment program.
Right. And that was your final treatment program.
And that was it.
That was it.
And then my sponsor, Bill, and a couple other guys came up to me after a couple months of my sobriety, and it was either Chuck or Bill, and I don't remember who said this to me, but you're not going to enough meetings, so we're going to take the meetings to your house. And so I thought, there's no escape clause here. How can I drink if they're taking meetings to my house?
It'd be harder.
And so I committed to it, and we started that meeting on Sunday at 7 o'clock on Sunday, and we started out with about 3 or 4 guys, and pretty soon we're up to like 15 to 20. And we had this thing going on for 8.5 years. And in that 8.5 years, there were some wild, crazy guys that came to my house that I didn't even know.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are dead from this disease.
Yeah.
In fact, I could mention so many different ones that I'd sponsored personally. That 4 people that I've sponsored that took their lives with alcohol. So that was kind of the that was the turning point for me that made me want to stay in recovery. I didn't want to go back to that person that I was. I wasn't expecting this kind of a life though. Because even though I was going in and out of AA, I wasn't expecting peace and serenity to follow me like it has throughout this day.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. I wake up this morning and I'm just like, I want to see the day. I didn't want to see daylight. I didn't want to hear the birds chirping. I didn't want to hear any of that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that, of course. When did you think you settled in deeply into your sobriety life? Like, how far in, how much work put in, what kind of rituals and routines and habits? When did you take a breath and go, whoa, for today, of course, without getting ahead of myself or yourself, when did it just get a little easier, I wonder? Because I think some people, and I know I've experienced this, early sobriety can be pretty unnerving. It can be pretty overwhelming. It can certainly be confusing, and I think a message that's always comforted me is hearing from people that, like you, have tried and tried again despite being unable to maintain long-term sobriety, tried and tried again, and then people that have just stayed sober long enough to kind of experience a bit of the miracle of long-term sobriety. Not that, as you always say, time being a tool, but I think time with consistent effort and the grace of God, I imagine it leads to a different kind of sobriety than in the early days. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so the beginning, if you look at the first year,
Yeah.
there's underlying causes of why people drink. So it's the mind and the body, right? We have an allergy to the booze once we put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's underlying causes, and those underlying causes for me was I was still stretching the truth in the first year.
Mm.
I was still lying.
Mm.
And so Jan and I got married when I had 3 years of sobriety, and she had 2.
Jan being your current wife of 20
years. Yeah, and we've been married 20 years. And the interesting thing here was I had told this lie, and it was like over a $29 deal, and I lied to her about paying for golf with my son. And I didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were desperate for money. And she said, you know what? I don't want to be married to you. I've been married to a liar, and I'm not going to be married to another one.
Mm.
So I had to look at my own sobriety. And I thought, if I can't get honest, because it was those underlying causes of dishonesty that caused this behavior to be alive and well. And it's like, I know that behavior can rear its ugly head once I stop working with people.
Yeah.
Once I stop this process of
Yeah.
growing spiritually, or trying to grow spiritually.
Yeah.
Once I stop all that, then I'm back to living up here.
And then that leads to the drink.
And this is a dangerous neighborhood to walk into.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So in other words, do you think one of the main reasons after years of trying and relapsing and creating wreckage and despair, do you think one of the main reasons you've been able to stay sober is that you've finally were addressing the core thought processes and behaviors of active addiction while sober, as opposed to simply eliminating the alcohol in and of itself? Like, do you think it's it that work that finally was put in that led to like that detachment from your old self?
No, that's one part of it.
Yeah.
The other part of it is, and the one that really kept me sober, is working with others.
Yeah.
You know, and it says in the literature, it says nothing will ensure sobriety like working with another alcoholic. And we both have seen people go back out and kill themselves. People go back out. I had a guy last year that said, you know, Ron, I love you, but let's put this sponsorship back on hold. And he's either in prison or on his way to prison because he went back out.
I mean, that's been my story with you. It doesn't have to be my long-term story, but Ron's been sponsoring me for, I want to say 3 or 4 years on and off.
Yeah.
And I have made that call to you that I wasn't going to be sober anymore. Usually after having one drink. I usually didn't have the courage to do it pre one drink, but you've never done anything except say, I love you. I'll always be here for you, and you're going to get this one day. You've always been that way. And I think that is a really cool thing that maybe we can wrap this up on is, what is the biggest difference, would you say, your last 5 years of recovery compared to your first 5 years of recovery? So give that comparison, if you would, as to what may have changed or what grounds you, how you think and feel differently, anything that comes to mind that might be useful.
Yeah. So the first 5 years of sobriety, there was, in my mind, every once in a while, that romance in that bottle.
Yeah.
You know? I'd go into a grocery store, right? Or go into, I don't go into bars. You know I don't have any business being in a bar.
Yeah.
Unless there was a specific reason. I just don't go into bars or places and hang around places like I used to.
Yeah.
In sobriety, I'd go to meetings and I'd go to bars. So I stopped that behavior in the first 5 years so I could get some traction.
Right.
But every once in a while, I would watch a movie,
Yeah.
and I hear the tinkling of the glasses, and like, man, I don't know if I can handle this marriage. I'm on my 4th marriage, and I don't even know if I want this. And all these thoughts were just, and so my sponsor would say, well, what's this got to do with your relationship with your higher power?
Right.
What has all this got to do, Ron? It has everything to do with this, that I'm self-centered. And when I get into that self-centered mode, all bets are off and I lose my peace. And so what I try and do today, to the best of my ability in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years, is to do whatever is requested of me to do, even when I don't want to do it. And that is to work with another alcoholic, to do a 12-step call, to go to meetings. After 24 years of sobriety, I go to a meeting a day. And I used to think, oh, these meetings are just such a drag. And now they're the most interesting thing I've ever been to.
What is it? What is it though? I hear you say, and I tend to agree. It's like the best show in town.
It's the best. It's the greatest show on earth.
That's what you said. Yeah, yeah. No kidding. Awesome. And generally speaking, your peace of mind and your sense of contentment is pretty high most days.
Most days it's pretty high. For me, I start off my day with prayer and meditation.
Yeah.
3 days ago, I didn't do that, and I don't know what happened, but Jan went back with the kids, and the grandkids were gone, and I kind of hit a flat spot, and then I had to review my day. So I try and walk with the spirit of the universe throughout the day.
Yeah.
And just being around you just makes me high. I mean, I love you, I always have, and I would do anything for you.
I know you would. Likewise. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. This has been awesome. This has been great. How are you feeling right now?
I feel a lot of joy. There's always a part of me thinking, you're not very articulate, you're not doing a good job, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I'm
the imposter.
I'm okay. That imposter will always creep up. But this has been fun. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. You're very articulate. You have the voice that I bet, and leave it in the comments section, guys, if you agree, but you have one of those voices that I think you could read bedtime stories and have them recorded, and the world would sleep more soundly just for listening to the tone of your voice and the candor of your speech and everything. It's no lie, guys, that this man is very much a big part of the reason I've been able to stay sober, and he would take no credit, and I suppose he shouldn't in the grand scheme of things. But the reality is, you represent the type of sobriety and recovery I want, and the reason I was pushed to reach out to this man is because I've, like his story, one of the things we have in common is that I tend to get sober, get in less pain, and then find myself back to my old ways and drinking again despite myself. And so I think one of the reasons I try to do these interviews, and I'd like to do more, and I'm so thankful that you're here, is to show other people that it is possible to break free of addiction. It is possible to find peace and contentment, and then even some joy and happiness in a life without drugs and alcohol. And that thinking you're hopeless doesn't mean you're hopeless, and that with breath in your lungs, if you just keep trying, there's a chance for a really, really good life. And I don't know if this has ever crossed your mind, and maybe we end it here, but I don't want to say it that way. I'm currently 10 and a half months sober. Even here now, at a month or two sober, I couldn't have quite imagined feeling quite this good, generally speaking. Not good in the ways that I used to feel good, which would be that artificial high, but just day-to-day good, where, like you said, excited to hear my dogs yipping for food and run outside, the birds are chirping, an acknowledgement of the sun shining, an enjoyment of a conversation. I didn't have a great sense of imagination for that, and I wonder if that's part of the thing that takes some of us back out way too soon, is that it can be a little uncomfortable early, and there's just time and healing and work that has to go in. But I just think it's a beautiful and important thing for people to remember, and I think you carry a torch of recovery that just is humble, it's consistent, and it's really dependable. My last little thing, and pardon me for droning on. I tried really hard not to talk too much. I really did.
You're doing a great job.
I'm ending on
I'm enraptured.
on a hot one. But what was I saying? I remember, something I've never thought myself to have, and I've always wanted, was to be someone that you could depend on. To be someone that you could could count on, to be someone who's consistent for other people. My character defects left unkept, my lack of spirituality, my ego, my fear, all that wrapped up in my addiction led to a wildly inconsistent person, a well-meaning person, and I think a good-natured person at heart, but an emotionally void person, someone who lacks self-awareness, and someone who couldn't be counted on. And so I love being around people like you, who I just associate with dependability, I associate with humility and consistency. I think those are virtues that that really, really lead to better self-esteem. And I think all I've ever wanted was just to not be disgusted by myself and just to feel okay. In addiction, there was never a way to find that. And in recovery, slowly, I seem to be getting closer, and it seems worth it, and it feels good. And I just think you're a really powerful example of the power of consistency, love, and care in recovery for another person. That just makes me want to keep trying. So thank you for that, in all sincerity.
The thing, if I may say this, the thing that I noticed about you from before and to now is that you took a risk of being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And we didn't do this in our family. We weren't vulnerable. We had nobody to share with. You know, when we felt something, my parents would say, you shouldn't feel that way.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that vulnerability piece, I've seen you go right to the honest. Vulnerability and honesty are so connected. Because we can hide behind that imposter, that exterior, that beautiful body, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And or money or things or possession. So it's all out there. What we're working on is internally. And then I had to take a risk of saying, you know what, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm sick and tired of being me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to die. I wanted to die so many different times. But when I finally started getting that vulnerability piece, it gave me the freedom to share who I really am. And I can do that with you.
Yeah, you can.
And it goes both ways.
Amen.
You've helped me immensely, because you're just a younger version of me. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. All right, guys, thank you for being here with us. It's been wonderful. In the comment section below, feel free to share any thoughts you have for Ron or anything going on with your personal story. We'd love to hear from you. It means a lot. And we'll see you guys in the next video. I will do my best to get another interview like this, out there soon. And this has been a good survivor's testimony episode.
Thank you, Noah.
Thank you, sir. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Heck yeah. That was awesome.
Wow, you do so well in front of a camera.
Thank you.
I get locked up, but thank you. I mean,
yeah.
what a great opportunity this has been.
Oh, that was awesome.
This was so much fun.